apiary, the harvest in this apiary, and we are going to the other apiary. Follow me! Hi everybody, today we will talk about the honey production and the period of harvest. In this country we have a very special and singular situation. Here we have mainly two different seasons, cedar season and summer season. Both happens in different periods of the year. The cedar season happens around October until November here in Fujairah, and the summer season started at the end of April of each year and stands until May of each year. For both we have, for cedar, we have a period of flowers around only 3 weeks. 3 weeks, 1, 2, 3, very short. And the summer, the period of flower of summer is less, around only 2 weeks. Then you can imagine the hard work that we have for receiving bees, for preparing material, for preparing the hives, and we need to be very exactly, the chronogram needs to be exactly with the great coincidence with the period of flowers. If we lose any details for preparing the hives for honey production and harvest, we will have the other chance only next year, not this current year. Then we need to check exactly the details, each step, for promote the growth of the hive, for promote the best way to have a coincidence of starting the flowering period and the hive with conditions to produce a lot of honey. This is our big challenge, a big difficulty for promote the details to handling the hive until we need to check the start of flowers of each season that we have here in United Arab Emirates, mainly in the Emirate of Fujairah that we work here. We will show you how to harvest. We worked for produce bees inside the hives during the period of flower. The bees storage nectar and change to honey, and we will show you how to proceed the harvest. Okay? Let's go together.
for do the loads with the hive supers with the honeycombs inside, we need to protect, we need to cover the hive supers with a canvas. For example, we use a big canvas for cover all loads during the transport from the apiaries until the establishment, because we use it off roadways, and in these roads we have a lot of dust that can enter inside the honey and promote any contamination. That's why we need to protect the honeycombs that we will extract the honey inside the establishment, put inside the hive supers and cover, of course, and after cover all loads with a big canvas for not add any kind of dust during the transport.
Now we are in Fujairah, in Apiary 2, for proceed the harvest here. And we will start to collect the honey, our part of the relationship between us and the bees. After this, we go to the establishment for offload these hive supers.
for harvest the honey, we have two options. Or we harvest during the season, the period that we have flowers yet on the trees, or at the end of the season when the flowers finished, coming to the end. We prefer to harvest at the end of the blooming period. Why? Because we will need to harvest only once, because there is no more flowers. If we harvest during the season at the middle of the blooming period, we need to come back at the end and harvest again. That's why we will harvest twice, and we have more cost, more work. That's why when we are sure that the bees not bringing more honey inside the hive from the flowers, we start to harvest this honey. Another thing very important is separate adequately the brood and the honey. Of course, we have a quantity of brood inside the hive yet, because they have food, they have bee bread, they have honey storage, and we need, of course, to check the frames that contains at the same frame brood and honey. The frames that contains brood and honey, it's very important we keep these frames inside the hive, because if you transport and extract this kind of honeycomb with brood, we have problem in contamination of the honey during the processing for separate the wax from the honey. That's why it's very important we separate the honeycombs only without any brood for the harvest and transport this honeycomb to the establishment. And usually we will stay from 2 until 3 frames with brood and honey inside the original hives. This is very important for the swarm stay there inside the box, and most important than this is that we need to stay there with the honeycombs as well. We need to have any honey storage inside the cells on the frames for the bees eating food, because if there is no flower around the apiary in this moment, in this date, if you remove 100% of the honey, we will have problems in the future, because the bees will be hungry, and mandatory and will be obligated you feed these hives with syrup for replace the honey that we remove. That's why we prefer to stay with some honey and stay and keep inside the boxes for the bees having for a few weeks later have food inside the hives. It's important after we harvest and stay with 2 or 3 frames inside the hives, depending the quantity of brood that you found on the frames, to complete the hive with 2 or 3 frames more, empty frames, for create a standard of 5 frames inside the hives, crossing all periods between the gap without any flowers. For the beekeepers, one thing very, very important during the harvest is if you are harvesting the honey during the day under the sun very strong, we need to keep the boxes under the shade. If not, we will have an increase of temperature inside the honeycombs and consequently inside the honey. And this action will create a substance in the honey which name is HMF. It's hydroxymethylfurfural. This substance, if you check and if you send the sample of honey to the laboratory, if you add any heat inside the processing room for handling the honey, that's why these analyses say to us if we have any problem during the harvest season. That's why it's very important to maintain the boxes under the shade only at the moment that you do the load. You put under the directly for the sunlight.
Now we finalize the harvest. We are preparing the load for transport the honeycombs to the establishment for proceed to extraction and processing. In next episode, we will show you how to proceed the extraction, which materials we need to use to do it. See you there. Bye.